Hi, welcome to Letters from New Zealand. I am John Jarvis. Belmont Regional Park sits north of Wellington on a range of hills between the Hutt Valley and Porirua Basin. It has only recently been designated a park. Previously, it had been New Zealand's largest ammunition depot, consisting of 42 ammunition storehouses, outside stacked metal ammunition boxes, many dating back to World War One. The buildings consisted of a house guarding the entrance gate, occupied by a sergeant and his family, a laboratory for the inspection of ammunition, recreation facilities, a single fire engine, a semi-armoured truck, and a demolition area with a dugout, firing control, and a World War II hand-crank siren. Ear protection was not supplied, resulting in many hearing loss claims by ex-ordnance personnel, married and single ammunition technicians, storemen called cracker stackers, and officers were stationed at Trentham. They travelled Monday to Friday by Land Rover. Coveralls and caps were accepted dress. Wellington's heavy coastal artillery had been dismantled without firing a shot in anger. A single test fire using a reduced charge did occur and broke half the windows in the suburb of Karori. The only opportunity to fire was lost when a German armed merchant cruiser was challenged. It was flying a neutral flag. It ran up a response and replied in Swedish, but for some reason the flags did not unfurl properly. It sailed on to lay mines in Wellington and the Hauraki Gulf, one of which sunk the Niagara, carrying gold bullion to the US. To add insult and injury, it also sank the Rangitoto out from England. Our coasts were for a time defended by 3.7 anti-aircraft guns, which were rotated around the hills to confuse the Soviet Navy. The ammunition storehouses, never call them magazines, were built of solid concrete and fitted with heavy steel doors. Around all sides were high-packed soil, solid hills to prevent sympathetic detonation. Trucks drove around the rampart in front to service the storehouses. Demolition was carried out after notices were posted in the newspapers and on radio. The armoured truck, fondly called the Red Terror, drove to the stacked shells. It had a 2-inch armoured plate behind the driver. The truck was loaded and the loaders driven to the demolition site, while the Red Terror trundled well behind. On arrival, the shells were unloaded and laid in craters in rows of 6, top and tailed in contact with each other. An officer placed a slab of gun cotton, it was cheaper than TNT, inserted a primer in the central hole, and finally an elective detonator to Cortex explosive fuse, and a final detonator wired back to the dugout. A red flag was run up and the siren cranked. The resulting explosion often caused dirt to fall down between the roof posts in the shelter. There was one final task to complete before the officer could declare the site free from explosives. Sometimes the shell and casing would be destroyed, leaving the percussion cap at the base of the cartridge intact. A corporal with a small hammer and spike to tap it off, and the sounds were similar to a cap gun. In one sad instance, the corporal failed to notice that part of the casing had folded over, leaving some propellant left intact. The resulting crump spoke volumes, and the corporal was evacuated -3 fingers. It soon became obvious that this method of disposal would take years to complete. Enter the Royal New Zealand Navy supply ship Endeavour. Northeast of New Zealand lays the world's deepest ocean, the Mariana Trench. Due east is an area almost as deep. There is microbial life and as yet unstudied primal fish forms. The New Zealand Army decided in its wisdom that it would be cheaper to dump hundreds of tons of defused ammunition in it for half the cost and time involved. The Ordnance Corps reported for duty at Miramar Wharf, along with a line of well-spaced trucks. When invited aboard, the naval ranks were appalled at having squaddies tramping over their highly groomed decks with their hobnail boots. Before sailing, they were ordered by the captain to haul in the stern anchor used to keep the ship's side a yard away from the wharf, while the naval rankings attended the more important other moorings. As Endeavour slid away, the Navy's rope coils were a beauty to behold, while the Army's were a tangled mess decorated with Coke bottles, condoms and seaweed. The petty officer's screams could be heard down the bowels of the ship. Dumping ammunition in rough weather can be dangerous. Endeavour tended to pitch as well as roll, so if the boxes were thrown overboard when the side was deep in a trough, it would more than likely that the sea would heave them back at you. Safety dictated that the boxes had to be jettisoned when the side was high out of the sea. After completion, the Navy, for reasons best known to themselves, sailed on to Christchurch, leaving us to make our own way home. As a concession, the captain allowed all Army uniforms to be laundered and pressed on board. The Navy had the last laugh when the trousers came back, pressed with 7 horizontal creases, 1 for each of the 7 seas. Belmont today is slowly overgrowing. The storehouses, with their collapsing doors, inhabited by sheep, and high explosive signs banging in the wind, seem to welcome it. Thank you for watching. Please tick the subscribe thingy at the bottom and keep in good health.